Now, the most important question, did I feel as if I was in a capital? Yes. Hi everyone! You've read the title, you know what it's about. I saw The Hunger Games on stage, the live theatre production of The Hunger Games that currently plays in the Troubadour Canary Wharf Theatre in London. I will structure this video to make it easier for people that are only interested in certain sections to just watch those sections. So I will start with just like a general disclaimer, my theater going experience, then I will go over the plot, and at the end over the technical details, how the theater is like built, structured, in case anyone is interested in that stuff, like me. Let's start with the disclaimer. So I saw the very first preview on October 20th, and I sat in District 5, so the entire theater is structured in like districts. So on two sides you have like District 1, District 2. Then with me I think there were District 5 and District 6. Across from us were District 7 and 8, etc, etc. And I sat in the front row, somewhere in the middle of District 5. So my experiences with the story, the actors, and especially some of the technical aspects will probably be very hyper-focused on the seat that I chose. Now, another little disclaimer I think I have to give is that on the very first preview, they didn't let people in until when it was scheduled to start. So it was scheduled to start at 7:30 p.m. and they said you should arrive probably like 45 minutes beforehand because there would be backchecks, and we did that, and there was a giant queue, and they didn't let anyone in until 7:30 when the show was scheduled to start. I think it started at like 8:45 p.m, 8:50, so we got out of the theater at midnight because it is a rather long show. I think 2 hours 40 minutes. So yeah, not the best start, but the director came out before the show and explained, number one, that we were the first people to ever see the show and to ever even sit in this theater, because the theater was, of course, especially built for the Hunger Games. But also that the actress for Clove was sick, and that her understudy didn't know the role yet because they were still previews, you know. And so the understudy would read the lines from the side, and the fight choreographer would do all the fighting scenes. I'm not sure if that was actually the reason why there was such a delay. It's the official reason. I don't believe them, especially because all around the theater there was still construction going on. Okay, enough yapping. Let's get into the actual plot. So I have the notes with me. If I look down rather often during this section, I'm sorry. Okay. The show begins with Katniss having a nightmare about being in the games, which is of course a change from both the books, where it starts with like Prim probably having had a nightmare and not sleeping with Katniss but her mom, and even the movies where Prim wakes up from having a nightmare and Katniss like calms her down. It was very I don't know how to describe it. A metaphorical nightmare. So like everyone was in blue spandex suits and like fighting with sticks. After she has a nightmare, she heads to the woods and meets Gale. There's a lot of Gale in this story. Get used to it. They adopt a lot of her like a lot of Katniss's internal monologue from the books, which is very much easier in like a theater setting than it is in a movie, because in the theater you have like the actors with you in the same room, so when they start talking to you, it's like, yeah, of course, there's a person in front of me. Of course they will talk to me. So a lot of the internal monologue that Katniss has in books is like almost directly translated almost one-to-one to the stage. And I think the actress for Katniss does a good job in narrating this audiobook. It very much felt like an audiobook for like the first 20 minutes of the show. Katniss and Gale are flirting with each other. I think it has become very talked about how almost the entirety of the cast for the Hunger Games on stage is Team Gale. I don't know how you can be Team Gale when you've read the books. I don't think they have read the books, but it is very obvious with like the interactions with the Katniss actress and the Gale actor, that those two are very much like interested in their characters having a romance, which I'm not interested in. I don't like it. Yeah, they do that. I cringe for the entire part. Then we go into the prep for the reaping. I really like Katniss's dress. Like, I think, considering everything, I think the costumes in this show are very good. I like them. There's one exception, and I'll get to that. No, there are two exceptions, but I'll get to them. Katniss's mother, Astrid, she feels a lot more present in the story. Like, no, not in the story. Like, she is like mentally a lot more present. So we know how she was like in the movies and the books. She still was very much reeling from, you know, having lost her husband and having been comatose for, you know, better part probably of 1 or 2 years. But here there's nothing there. It felt as if her mother was her mother. And Katniss didn't really have a reason to hate her. They didn't really go into like Katniss hating her mother. They very much skipped over that part. Then the reaping happens almost exactly as it did in the book, like with Haymitch like stumbling on junk and hugging Effie. The mayor speaking of like the two victors District 12 had. Okay, then President Snow appears. Yes, he already appears. He is played via pre-recorded footage that gets displayed on the LED screens at the side of the stage. It feels stiff, incredibly awkward, and if I didn't know that the actor that plays him was like a famous actor, I would question why they chose him. I still question it because it doesn't even feel like Snow. It also doesn't feel like a human being. I don't think the actor was very interested in playing this, nor was he very like present of mind. We have like the plot device from the movie as like, you know, a message from the Capitol. President Snow now tells you of the history of the Hunger Games, and then he does that. Then Effie draws the name. It's Prim. You know, it happens. It happens as in the book or the movie. The Peacekeepers are a lot more violent in this, more so like they were in Catching Fire than they were in Hunger Games. I don't know why, except that it makes for better theater, I guess. If there's already action happening, with like the Peacekeepers beating up the people that did the 3-finger salute for Katniss. I don't know. Something, a trend that I've noticed that starts here is like every time Katniss wants to speak about Peter or like give like an exposition dump, she gets cut off towards the end. I'm starting to think that the actors were not the only ones that were Team Gale in this production. But yeah, she gets cut off before she can like finish the story of like how Peter saved her by giving her the bread. I mentioned the like 3-finger salute before. When Effie says, let's all applaud for our very first volunteer. Everyone raises their hand. Here only 2 or 3 people do, and they're immediately dragged off by the Peacekeepers. So I don't know what that's about. I feel like with every iteration of adaptation of the Hunger Games, the period that Katniss gets with like her family and the people of her life to say goodbye gets shorter, because like in the book she had like 1 hour to like talk to everyone she wanted to do, everyone that wanted to see her. In the movie it was like 5 minutes, and then Gale also had to like convince the Peacekeepers to let them talk to her, and here's like half a minute, then we're done. And then the most controversial change, Gale is the one to give Katniss the Mockingjay pin. I don't like it. I guess there's like the argument that like, well, Gale is an established character and we couldn't really do Madge because that would have, diverted from the story. But like the word on Hop earlier, There was explicitly a scene where they were in a hub and sold their catch. And now everything Katniss does, you know, her entire journey as a Mockingjay, will not be tied to like Maisie Lee, and like the first attempted rebellion as was in a book, or like the kindness of her district as it was in a movie, but like Gale. I don't like this. I mean, I like Gale as a character. I like Gale as a concept. I don't like the Gale Katniss shipping thing because it's against the entire point of the book. But okay. I saw someone on Reddit. I don't know. I don't know if I can find them. They suggested that Katniss's mother, Astrid, should have been the one to give Katniss the Mockingjay pin if we couldn't have Madge. Which, yes, that would have been a good Jane, especially with them already doing like several hints and references towards Sunrise on the Reaping. Then we got on a train. Haymitch makes a mess of himself. This time not by vomiting, but just by like, you know, spilling alcohol over himself. Katniss and Peeta both try to clean him up. Then there's a fist fight that happens. Katniss actually throws... No, she doesn't throw the knife yet. She at first like holds it to Haymitch's throat, and then he tells her throw the knife, and then she does. And that's how she, that's how she proves that she can actually fight. And Peeta does get a chin hook. Is it called a chin hook? Like, Haymitch punches him. And then Haymitch tells Peeta, no. Keep that bruise visible. It makes the people think that you were involved in a fight. And that you're tough and strong. Haymitch is very quick to agree to help them. It takes like one line of argument from Katniss for him to be like, who cares that it didn't work for the past 23 years of tributes. I know you're gonna be just fine if I help you. Which... Okay. Effie wishes Haymitch a happy birthday, as in reference to Sunrise on the Reaping. Then there is a musical number once they reach the capital. They just like... Our characters sit on the side of the stage and watch a musical number. The lyrics are not important to what is happening. It just happens because I believe the playwriter thought the play was becoming too boring. Cut to, what I said at the beginning about this feeling like we are in the capital. Cinna is dressed ostentatiously. He is very much a capital citizen in this, and I would be afraid of him. He's not the kind and helpful person that he was in either of the two previous adaptations. I don't like Cinna. He doesn't feel like Cinna. And I don't know what they wanted to do with this character. Katniss's prep team is not there, but there are people helping Cinna. Maybe they are supposed to be the prep team, I don't know. Then we are introduced to the other tributes as they are, walking away from their characters from the opening ceremony. And then, what I said like just a minute ago about how it feels like we're in the capital. They open up, the stage is a circle, and they open up the circle to create a very, just like a long straight line, upon which the wagon of Katniss and Peeta flies past above us, and we literally, the people watching this show, literally become the capital. Which is funny to me. They do, luckily, hold hands. There was a severe lack of Evelark up until now, and there will continue to be a severe lack of Evelark in this show. But they do hold hands. Then, during the parade, we have another insert of Snow, and this time he talks directly to Katniss. Makes like references to District 12 and how, it's such a beautiful district, and that he wishes her the best of luck. He talks to her and no one else, and I don't like it. I haven't really mentioned Peeta yet. he's played very strangely. He's played like Peter Hayes paint him out to be like very macho, very assured of himself. And it also feels a bit like he's trying to manipulate Katniss at several points. A word about Katniss, she's played very loud and argumentative. I believe the actress said in a interview that she sees Katniss as being very fearless, very ferocious, which is not Katniss. That is very much not Katniss. Katniss is afraid. She's a 16-year-old girl thrust into these circumstances, and I don't know how anyone can see her as being fearless. Do you miss Gale already? I don't, but the show apparently did, because then we get an extended scene of Katniss talking to Gale in her mind and saying like, oh, I'm so afraid. It's so different in the capital. I wish I was home. With you. Before anyone says anything, I like Gale. I like Gale as a character, okay? But this is very much not the book, not the part of the story where he's supposed to be in. You know, Catching Fire and Mockingjay, those are his times to shine. You shouldn't, like, put him in here. Why is he in Hunger Games? This is not his story. If you want to do more Gale stuff, then adapt Catching Fire, adapt Mockingjay. You know, not the Hunger Games. Then we get to the training montage. Haymitch is the one to like actually like train Katniss and Peeta. Like he is in the gymnasium, I guess, where the tributes train. I don't really hate it. It's not in character, of course, but like you need someone to like exposition dump, to lore dump about like everything that happens within the training and how they should prepare for the arena. And I guess he's like the least worst possibility for that to happen. And Katniss makes fun of Peeta for doing camouflage. So she's not like, why are you doing this? This is useless. She actively makes fun of him. Moving on, at the private session with the game makers, Katniss has 2 arrows she fires. So the first she shoots perfectly immediately. But no one really reacts, no one is watching her, and then the second arrow she fires into, you know, the apple in the pig. So we went from, in the book, her having to train with like half a dozen arrows to get used to the strange bow, to the strange bows that they use in a capital, to in the movies having missing one shot, hitting the next, and then the pig, and now she's perfect immediately. Katniss has no flaws. She is our Lord and Savior. Points get read out during the interviews, which I guess helps to save time. Rue is like the only one we see speak. Then Katniss, whose dress does not go up in flames and is just an ugly mixture of like white and grey feathers. And then Katniss is made to sit in on Peeta's interview, so she stays on stage while Peeta does his love confession, which only helps to further the allegations that stage Peeta is trying to manipulate Katniss because he probably told Caesar he wants Katniss on the stage for what he's about to say. Which I don't like. Peeta does his confession exactly like the words that he says in the book, then Katniss hits him, and then they get prepared for the games, and just as the weedy audience are welcomed into the 74th Hunger Games, the intermission happens. Which, I mean, I guess, is a good point to stop. We're not gonna stop. I'm going to continue taking you through this, of course. The second act starts with, you know, the game's opening. There's a lot of fighting, a lot of murder. Every time someone dies, there's like a boom, and then a red light appears on the body to symbolize them being dead, which, you know, is better than killing people live on stage. There's also a lot of running around in circles, which, I mean, the stage is not very large, so I guess you have to run around in circles, but it does look very strange. Upon the 5th run around of the circle. Then the dead get announced. It's like all the actors line up in the lineup, and then Caesar and for some reason a female announcer read out like which districts are, you know, dead, and then there's boom and a red light appears on the person, and then they step out. And every time a district a tribute dies, there's also a red light on the part of the audience who sits in their district. So for me, I of course sat in District 5, and we didn't see a red light until Foxface died, right at the very end. Which, I mean, are we in the capital, or are we supposed to be the districts, or did the producers of the show not really think this through? Then, of course, Katniss runs. She climbs onto a tree, which in this case is a truss that I had slow it down from the ceiling. The careers arrive, kill, the girl from District 7, I believe. Which, by the way, the girl from District 7 is played by Prim's actress. They reuse actors, and I noticed. And also, they had the girl from District 4 be part of the careers, which is book accurate. I like that. Then Katniss actually struggles with finding water. It's very metaphorical, like the stage becomes a desert and there are actors running around dressed entirely in black with skulls of animals that you find in the desert. It's kind of a funny image when you see it live on stage. But, Katniss does her monologue, says I can't even think straight, I am so thirsty. But then she does find water and it gets rated exactly as in a book. She touches mud and it's like, mud means water. I've almost found water. But then she doesn't drink from the water because that's when the fireball happens. So the arena gets burst up in flames and we never hear of her having to drink water ever again. This, of course, goes over into the careers hunting her. She climbs onto another truss/tree. And then the careers do a dance number. I mean, it's well choreographed and they do a good job. I don't like it still. Also, something I forgot to mention is there's they also sang the hymn after the interviews. So there's a lot of singing and a lot of dancing in this. It's not a musical though. They sing and they dance, but it's not a musical. Rue shows Katniss Jackers. She shows her at night, like she does in a book, but then Katniss immediately throws it down onto the careers, like in the movie. Katniss gets stung, clamors for the bow, and then Peeta arrives, tells her to run away, and then we actually see him fight against Cato. And while I do like that we see Peeta actually defending Katniss, I think this was not added because the screenwriter liked Peeta. I think it was added because this is a live stage medium and we haven't seen action in a while. Katniss has, of course, a nightmare, then she wakes up, then we do the alliance with Rue. Rue recognizes the sunglasses that Katniss had in her backpack. So, small snippet for all the movie-only watchers. In Katniss' backpack, in the books, she had dried bacon, crackers, iodide, I believe it's called. And she does have all of that in the stage play as well, and she also has sunglasses that are not actually sunglasses, but help you see better at dark. And Rue recognizes that because they were given those during the harvest, when it became dark and they were still needed outside. And then they agree to blow up the career supplies. Also, another fun snippet, fun, as in the fun of this show. The Rue's song and Katniss' single, this is now a common District 12 call. So common in fact that when Cato hears this done by the Mockingjays, he's like, always those District 12 always think they're better than us, something like that. I don't know why they did that. And then Katniss shoots the bag with the apples 3 times. But it's not as she does in the book where it's first arrow misses almost, and the second hits, and the third finishes the task. And this is she shoots once, misses, then she shoots once, hits, but it doesn't really do anything, and then she's like, why won't this work? Shoots, and then boom, explosion. So it's not Katniss thinking strategically, but her being annoyed and doing something with brute force, which is very much not Katniss. Then the explosion happens, the boy from District 3 dies, he got a name, I forgot what it was, Katniss runs to Rue dies, Marvel dies, Katniss is sad, Katniss sings a song, and then some small flower petals fall from the ceiling. Katniss picks up 3 of them and drops them onto Rue, because it would have been too much of a hassle to like cover Bruce's entire actress in flowers. And then we have another dance break intermission from the capital citizens, which feels very out of place. Snow talks to who I assume is Seneca Crane. He's not ever like named, and he just is a guy in a black trench coat with like black pair of sunglasses. So I don't know if it's supposed to be Seneca, but I believe it is. But Snow tells Seneca of like the hope, spark, flame theory, and that he should do something about, you know, Katniss. And then it gets announced that 2 people can win, and Katniss goes to fight Peeta, and she finds him by like walking around the stage once, and then a hand shoots up from underneath the stage, and that's Peeta. His wound is actually dramatic. It needs caring for. Not like in the movies where it was like a cut and then, we should really find some medicine for you. But like more like in a movie, like, oh my god, this has gotten infected. This is serious. The soup that arrives via parachute is immediately laced with like sleeping draught, and Katniss, you know, manipulates Peeta into eating it, and then she leaves for the feast at the cornucopia. And then the feast happens. Foxface, who in the show is called Fossa, which very much just feels like, we need a name that like sounds kind of like Foxface, but we don't want to call her Foxface. Let's call her Fossa. I don't think that's a change that came from Suzanne. But yeah, Foxface, I will not call her Fossa. Foxface, you know, shoots up out of the, you know, the entire stage is covered with smoke, and then she shoots up out of the smoke, grabs her back, and runs away. And then, you know, the entire like Clove, Katniss, Thrush stuff happens. The medicine that Katniss got for Peeta was an injection, like it was in the book. She falls asleep from her wound. Peeta wakes up. Peeta is healed. They talk a lot. We see a short intermission where Caesar himself goes to District 12 to interview Katniss' family. And Prim and her mother say some stuff, but it's not important. The very much focus of the story, of this scene, is on Gale and how he very much does not want to talk to Caesar, and how he's very angry that currently Katniss and Peeta are getting closer. Then we go back to the arena, and Peeta tells Katniss of the story of how he first fell in love with her. When, you know, the first day at school, when Katniss sang the Valdi song, which they then sing. First, Peeta sings it, I believe with the, like, implication that he remembered her words from all those years ago. Then Katniss sings it, and then they kiss. I think this scene, like, in a vacuum, is wonderful. Like, I loved it. It very much, like, felt like Evelark fanfiction. I wish they would have sung together, and not just, like, first Peeta, then Katniss, then they kiss, but then also, like, them singing together, but, like, I guess the show was still written by a Team Gale person. And because of their makeout session, because it is a makeout session, like, they do make out. You know, a lot of parachutes fall down, and one of them almost hit me. I believe they should have probably fixed that by now. I believe the previews are over, so I think they fixed that now. Then we hear, you know, the boom from the cannon in the distance, and then we see that Cato killed Thresh, and then we go into the end game. They leave their cave, Foxface trails them, she eats the berries, and then it's only them and Cato left. It gets dark, and the Mutts attack, and Katniss says that they look like the dead tributes. She doesn't really have any more of a violent reaction to it, but she says they look like them. It doesn't, to me, look like them, but you know, I guess that's like the limits of the stage. There were people in black jumpsuits. They climb onto the cornucopia. Peeta gets dragged down multiple times before he's finally up. Then Cato grabs him. Katniss shoots him in the hand. He falls down. And then Cato begs Katniss for mercy as he's like hunted around the cornucopia. But Katniss doesn't shoot him. And then Kato is like dragged off by the moths. Felt very disturbing, especially because Katniss's quiver was still full of arrows. It wasn't like in the book where she really had like no arrows left, and she would have, she would have killed him, had she had an arrow. She had multiple arrows and she didn't do shit. I hate this Katniss. Then it gets morning again. Peter's wound was ripped open again and he's bleeding out. Then comes the news that only one person can win. Peter gets out his knife. Katniss draws her bow because she thinks they're now fighting. But then Peter throws away his knife. Katniss feels guilty about having almost killed him just now. Then they do the stunt with the berries, and then they get announced both as victors. And as Peter gets dragged off, Katniss screams for him, which I like. Thank you very much. So Peter gets dragged off because, he's bleeding out and he needs medical attention. Katniss awakes completely in white, and she walks slowly along the stage next to Haymitch, who's also dressed entirely in white, and they have their like post Hunger Games chit-chat about how she really needs to convince everyone that she's in love with Peter, otherwise her act with the berries was treasonous and not made out of love. Snow talks to her once again. It is once again really bad. It feels really stilted, and not just because like live actors are talking to a projection on a wall, but because the actor doesn't do shit. He just reads out his lines, and it annoys me so bad. They both get crowned. Peter has a cane. He's there completely in white with a white cane, and my day has been saved. Thank you. Then they return home. Peter says that, that he's actually in love with Katniss and that it wasn't a game. And Katniss is like, she doesn't know what to do now. And then, the people of District 12 walk towards them. And among them is Gale, but Katniss only hugs Prim, and then we cut to black. And that was the show. So yeah, they made some changes that I liked, and a lot more that I didn't. A lot more. There's always like this thing, like, of course you need to make changes in an adaptation because books are like a completely different medium to the stage, but like, you can adapt a book to the stage. It has happened before multiple times. Just like The Lightning Thief, of course it's a musical, so it has it a bit easier, but that's a good adaptation on the stage. I've also heard that the Rebecca musical was also a very good adaptation. Now for some of the technical aspects, or like at least the stuff about like the staging that I noticed. So of course I said that the stage was like an elliptical circle in the middle of the theater, with the audience sitting almost as if this were like concert grandstands around it. I sat in the front row, so sometimes when the actors were really close to me, I heard them like not over the speakers, but directly, which was, an experience. The lighting was good. The audio was also good. I noticed a few times, I believe it was because it was like the first preview, so of course it wasn't going to be perfect, and of course I'm from that field of work, but I noticed a few times where they muted the actors a bit too early when they still had stuff to say, or turned the microphones on also a bit too early. And one time they missed like during the interviews, they play audio sometimes of what like the audience is supposed to say, and they also show on screens above the audience what the audience is supposed to say, so like in the hope that we participate. So it was like, woo, cheers, oh, and because of that I noticed that they missed one of the one audio clip. It was like a woo, wow sound. They didn't play it, either because they missed it didn't fire, I don't know. It's just something I noticed. There's a lot that comes down from the ceiling. So in the scene where Katniss gets dressed for the interview, there are dresses that come down from the ceiling, and then she tries them on, and then they go up again. The cornucopia is just, stuff that hangs from the ceiling and that the tributes grab. The feast is also, the backpats backpacks come down from the ceiling. There are, of course, the truss, which is this, if you don't know, this is the truss, which comes down from the ceiling, which Katniss then climbs. It's always with like the necessary safety equipment. So when Katniss climbs the truss, she has a belt already on where she just hooks herself on, so she does fall down. She doesn't like fall further than like 50 centimeters or something. During the training, there was also a moment where a climbing net came down from the ceiling, and then Katniss and Peeta climbed it, and there were also people securing them, which was nice. Thank you. I was really impressed by the way they did the arrow shooting, because like obviously you can't ensure that your actress always hits her target at every point. So what they did was she did actually shoot arrows, not like dulled ones, not like live ones that you can kill people with, but she shot arrows somewhere in the general direction of where they were supposed to go. So the arrow she shoots into Cato's hand, she shoots it in his general direction, and then there pops, and then he has like a mechanism in his hand which hides an arrow, and then he activates it and the arrow pops out and it looks like she shot his hand. And they did it a few times. And once, I believe the arrow that the Katniss actress shot hit some equipment because it made a really loud clash. I believe she hit something she was not supposed to hit. Then the stage also had like multiple platforms that could lower into the ground or rise up, which they used sometimes, mostly to like make the train came up. The train was, that came up from below the stage. The tributes came up from below the stage on platforms. Sometimes they also stood on the platform and got lowered into it, mostly for dead bodies. Like, for example, Rue laid exactly in the middle, and when she died and when her body was supposed to disappear, that lowered her body into the ground, and then she was gone. I didn't notice anything else. The projection, is it called projection? The holograms? Projections? The videos on the LED screens were really well made. There was one when they were in the Capitol and, the window to the outside. I believe they just took screenshots from the movie because it looked really similar, which, I guess you can do if you want to. And also, something that, I believe we saw in like the marketing, if you follow the marketing, but sometimes actors would fight on the wall. So they would be like strung up on like strings and harnesses, and they would walk around the wall and fight each other, sideways, which looked really funny. It was also never the like main focus of the scene. It was just like when people were fighting, there were also some people on the wall. I believe Rue's actress was also once lowered to the ground from the ceiling. So she was already on the ceiling, on a truss, and then she was lowered downward. And then also, the moment that, shocked us all was when, on the side of the stage, there's District 1 and District 2. So those are the head of the ovals. You can open them up. So there are two sections, two stands, and they're movable. So when needed, you can open up the audience to make the stage larger, which of course they did for the Tributes Parade, for example, which then created, a long walkway, I guess, over which Katniss and Peeta flew in a wagon. They also did that for some of the scenes in the arena when they needed a bit more space. And also for the reaping, they open up one side as well. The costumes were okay. I liked them. Most of them look like they did in the movie, so there was a very clear inspiration taken from the movie. But I liked them for the most part. It was quite okay. And in the arena, all the tributes have like plaques with their district number on them. So that you can, I don't know if you saw them from like the very back of the audience, but I saw them. So technically you can figure out which tribute is standing in front of you just by looking at their costume, which was nice. Now, would I recommend it? Yeah? It's like questionable, yeah. If you know what you're getting yourself into, which is not a, completely faithful adaptation of the Hunger Games, that very much relies on spectacle over story sometimes, and are more interested in the technical aspects, like how they, adapted such a novel like this with a lot of fighting and, death and blood onto the stage, then you can have a good time. I had a good time. And also, the theater when I wasn't finished yet, and also there's only one very narrow exit. So after the show, everyone exited through one very narrow staircase, and I don't want to know what the situation looks like when there's an actual emergency happening. I hope they fix it. Also, the doors can't stay open on their own, which is questionable. But yeah, that was The Hunger Games on stage. As a book fan, I was not a fan of the story. I was a fan of the technical aspects. I liked how they adapted it onto the stage. But yeah, you don't have to watch it.